Hi, everybody. Welcome to the May 2018 edition of the Paul Crouse Show on the Star Nations Radio Network, where we talk with a broad range of international guests about living life better and making a difference in our rapidly changing world. Today, I'll be talking again with my friend Frances Robbins, who's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. There's Frances. Oh, wait, it's a mirror thing. There's Frances. She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner, aka a shrink. And an all-around good person. And the title of our show today is Loneliness and Isolation. But before we get to our conversation, let me say a little bit about myself. My name is Paul Crouse. I'm a spiritual teacher, advisor, and life coach based here in Kyoto, Japan. I help people who want to consciously change their lives for the better. I help them sort out their insides, solve their problems, guide them to where they really want to go in life. I do this worldwide via internet video calling or face-to-face here in Kyoto. Mm-hmm. You can reach me through my website, which is paulcrouse.com. That's Crouse with a C, Crouse. Or you can just search for tootallpaul.com, because most people can't remember my name. I'm 6'5" or nearly 2 meters tall. That's tootallpaul.com. And if you get a chance, make sure to listen to some of the other great shows we have here on the Star Nations Radio Network. You can listen to the shows live or at any time in the archive. Just go to starnations.org, where you can find the radio shows and lots of other great content. And you can listen to any of my past shows on my website at paulcrouse.com. Just click on where it says radio show. This isn't a radio show anymore. I guess we're going to call it a talk show. We need internet talk show. I don't know what else to call it. Anyway, also make sure to stick around after for Julie Hedges' Tarot Journey Show, which will be on just after me. So with that out of the way, I'm going to introduce my guest again. It is Frances Robbins.
Hey there. How's it going?
I'm doing really good. And how about you? Where are you now? The last month when we were on the show, we were both in Thailand. I was in the south in Koh Samui, and you were in the north in Chiang Mai. So where are you right now?
Yes, I am in Gresham, Oregon, in the United States.
Gresham, Oregon. Where's that?
It is a suburb of Portland. Okay. So it's on the northern part of Oregon on the Washington state border. The border. Okay.
So is this technically still Portlandia?
It is.
Yes,
it is. I have been to some meetups and some just some different gatherings of people, and I have experienced the Portlandia scene.
Tell me just what is a Portlandia scene?
It's let's see, free range, organic, sustainable living.
Okay,
it's
I heard
all
something
of those
about
things.
Lots of tattoos and piercings too.
Lots of tattoos and piercings. A lot of folks, just kind of very natural.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, people.
Awesome.
You don't know anything. You can't jump to any conclusions when you see anybody. We met a guy. I have to tell you this. We met a guy that said he and his girlfriend, they play a game called Homeless or Hipster. Because they can't always tell. They're like, are they homeless or are they a hipster? Oh, they're a hipster. See the Apple computer? Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the quite contrast to here in Japan, where we used to play a game on the train. It was like, you see a couple sitting there, and it would be sort of like girlfriend or daughter.
Oh.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Totally different.
But nonetheless, same games about people watching. Okay, so tell me just real briefly, you were traveling quite a bit since the last time we saw you. Where did you go? What did you do?
Oh, wow. It was amazing. So from Chiang Mai, my husband and I went to Cambodia. We went to Angkor Wat and saw all of that. That was amazing. Then from there, we went to Hanoi Bay, and we were spending a couple nights in Vietnam. From Vietnam, we traveled throughout China, mostly on the southern half of China, and finally migrated over to Shanghai. And we stayed in Shanghai for a few nights, 4 nights, I think. And then we flew out to Vancouver, BC. Thank you, Air China. It was a fabulous flight. And we stayed in Vancouver, BC for a few nights, and then we arrived in Portland. Gosh, it's been a week. We've been here a week.
Okay, so what's the sort of wackiest thing you saw on this trip? Or memorable? It doesn't mean the most, but anything
I
that's
know,
really...
I know, like something that was just like, oh my goodness. What have I seen? I don't know. You didn't prep me beforehand, Paul.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I've seen probably the way people are dressing and just getting accustomed to that, because I haven't seen it so much with all the piercings and the hair color and the kind of different way that folks dress here in Portland is so different than what I've seen in Asia.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that transition was kind of weird. I tell you, coming to the States, it was really information overload, because my husband and I've spent the last 9 months traveling all over Asia, and I'm illiterate in most of the places we're at. I can't read the local language. I don't understand the dialect. I don't really know what people are saying around me or not. But then you come back to the States and like I can read all the signs, and I'm connecting to the side conversations, and I'm thinking, oh, that's very interesting. They're having that going on. Oh, this is happening over here, and then the pages overhead.
Yeah, and then, well, I noticed too, living overseas, is like then people have conversations in English, even if it's really hard to turn it off. You don't want to listen, but yeah. Also, last time I went to the States, there's all those like legal disclaimers on everything suddenly.
Yes.
Gloria land. Okay, great.
It has been interesting, but we're acclimated to the time now. I feel really good. It's actually 5 p.m. on Monday here.
Good.
So
okay.
I'm a day behind you.
Yeah, 7 a.m. here. All right. Well, I was in Koh Samui, which is an island in the Gulf of Thailand in South Thailand, and I was at my friend Hillary Adrian's Samui Dharma Fasting Center, Dharma Healing Center.
Sounds amazing.
And I did a fast for 17 days. People are like, oh my gosh, you didn't eat for 17 days. It's like, well, no solid food, but we took in nutrients and so forth. It's
sure.
It's for cleansing, and it was great. I feel so much. I wasn't feeling very good before I left. I was pretty stressed out, and just also my physical body, and I just cleaned out, and I feel so much better. And it was also my friend Hillary who was there, runs the place, and she's wonderful. And another friend of mine was there, and then I met a bunch of people and had friends. It was really nice to be 40 meters from the beach, so I could go swimming twice a day. And
nice.
So it was also just good to be in Thailand. Thai people are really nice and friendly.
They are very nice and friendly. They have such a good heart.
Yeah, and just nice to see smiling all over the place. So anyway, so if people are interested, you can look up Samui Dharma Healing. Ooh, Samui S-M.
How do you spell that? S-M?
Dharma with a H. D-H-A-R-M-A. Dharma, not karma. Dharma. Dharma is the law. Okay, so Hillary Adrian that's her when she was married previously. So Hillary Adrian. So she's really lovely. Check it out. For a lot of people, it's not for everyone, but it can be really helpful for people to learn about their bodies and clean out their bodies and learn a different way of eating. My eating has improved a lot since I've come back. I've gone there before, but it's also a good reminder. So, and how I feel so much better. So we talked about this before in previous shows about like how sleep and eating has a lot to do with how we're feeling up here.
Yes.
So right now I'm off of like sugars and junk food, and I want to stay off of that, because I think, like, I just actually ate at a restaurant down the street for the first time in, I don't know, more than a month. And it seems like a nice restaurant, but as soon as I left, I just felt really horrible. It's like, I guess I'm not going to go back there again. And I thought I ate, I chose food that I thought was good, but as we also spoke about before, it isn't always just necessarily the food, but all the junk that's put it in, all the chemicals.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, and that can bring it. I mean, when you physically feel bad, I mean, it has a drag on everything, right?
It does, and even the air you're breathing. So was the restaurant that you were in? Did people smoke in there?
Oh, no. That's that kind of restaurant. Although the air here, I noticed when I came back and before I left, we get a lot of the Chinese air pollution in my lungs.
Oh yeah, that orange dust.
Yeah. Well, and just all the smoke that's coming out of the factories and the cars and so forth.
Yep.
So.
Yep. When we were in China, I wore a mask all the time, and it was awful. The air quality is really awful, and the people don't. I mean, they're always coughing, but it's because their lungs are full of all kinds of nasty stuff.
Yes, it's really sad.
So it is.
Now, having said that, the Chinese people are actually they're trying. Obviously, it takes
they are. They're planting a lot of trees and they're trying to like clean up a lot. They are. It's just so massive.
China in general, if you want to talk about stuff, the scale of it is just mind blowing. But all those leaders in China too, they're living in Beijing. They have to breathe that air too. So the motivation is. So. Well, let's segue then into our topic for today, which was loneliness and isolation. Now, you had mentioned this a little bit before as we're going through ideas for shows. So why don't I'm pitching you one.
No problem. I'm catching it. Okay. So I will tell you, in the United States, there's a loneliness epidemic.
Okay.
There's a loneliness epidemic. And what we're seeing is the more connected people are with their internet or social media, the more connected they are, the more disconnected they are, the more they really are isolated. So there's a huge problem with social isolation in the United States, and I can only imagine it's morphing globally as people are more connected. Even as we were traveling, connected online. Yes, thank you. Connected online. And what I'm seeing, even when I was traveling across Asia, even in India and Nepal, the good news is people have the accessibility and the ability, and they can afford a smartphone with the ability to text and check the internet and all that kind of stuff. But that also is unfortunate too, because they are also super connected. So you see it all the time where people are in their phone, they're walking down a street and they're in their phone. Yeah, exactly. They're walking, they run off. Yes, exactly.
What? Did you say something?
Well, and the bad thing is what we're seeing is the kids that parents, I mean, I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. Thank God they're grown and they're adult people and they're responsible adult people. But when they were little, if I could have slapped an iPad in front of their face to keep them quiet, I think I probably would have done that. Because it would have solved that immediate problem. But what's happening is the children they're so honed in on the electronics. They're growing up with that is their only interaction with other people. And so they're in the United States, we're seeing huge deficits or huge problems with social interaction. People don't know how to talk to people. We're seeing an increase in anxiety and panic because they've never had to experience what we would consider a life. Creativity is going down because they don't have the opportunity to just sit around and think and be bored. I mean, being bored is something that you don't hear people say. I mean, when I was a kid, we were bored all the time, right? You're bored. Well, go outside and play. Go find you something to do.
Yeah,
you're bored. I'll give you something to do.
Something, right? To figure something out, right?
Yeah.
Mom, I'm bored.
Right.
Go, get out of here. I don't want to hear that anymore.
Exactly.
Good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now they don't do that. They're connected
Well, also,
online.
when I was working as a teacher at this elementary school, you'd see, one of the biggest things kids need to do is they need to have conflict, actually. I mean, they need to have to deal with each other and
Right.
playing
It's how
out,
you build
they need to sort out.
resiliency.
They need how to learn how to sort out stuff amongst themselves.
Right.
And actually, the school I was at, the kids were pretty good at it because, and the way the situation was, they had a lot of playtime outside, and I think obviously, I think little kids should be covered in dirt and have lots of scrapes on them.
Absolutely. I'm right there
But
with
there's
you.
so many that I see them, but I see people on the.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so well, one other thing while we're talking about this, I took my case off my phone, and since this is the spiritual network, right? Anyway,
Right.
I want to point out to this. You see that logo?
Yes.
Apple, right?
Yes.
How do we know that in mythology? In myth,
Oh yeah.
so
She took a bite.
yeah, well, who offered, so Adam
The
and Eve, right? The Garden
serpent.
of Eden, and so
The
who
serpent.
the serpent tempted
The apple vendor.
the apple. Steve, I looked it up. Obviously, I'm not the first person to have realized this, and that wasn't the reason they put it on there. But the bite of the apple, right, from the tree, it was the fruit of the tree of knowledge, right? And so this is so we could go into. I'd like to have a rabbi talk about what is that symbolism in this mythology. It's the separation of ego and spirit is one way to describe it, but everything was great in the Garden of Eden, right? And God said you can do whatever you want, just don't eat that from the fruit of the tree of knowledge.
Right.
And then the serpent's like, come on, you can have a little bit there, just a little bite. Give it to your boyfriend over here. It's fine, it'll be fine. God, he doesn't. What? He gives you all.
He loves you. Why would he hurt you?
Why would he hurt? Yes. And then they tossed him out, and then blah 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 blah. But so just to think about that in regards to
but everybody, this is this world that we live in. People they want a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
They want a quick fix, and it's a real. I mean, I just champion that mom who tells her kid, "No, you're not getting a smartphone. You're 6." or no, we don't. I really wonder. So back in my parents' generation, my parents were Depression era.
Okay.
And they saw the introduction of the television into the house. And when they first had a television, it was a very big deal. It was a piece of furniture, right? It was in the living room. You gathered around, like it was a big social event. And then over time, and I come around, TV becomes not just a certain hours of the day, it's on all the time. Everybody has a television in their room. Like you aren't somebody unless you have like a TV in your house or in your room, in your space. And the family would start breaking up, watching television shows, each watch their own show, and there would be no sense of community again. And I wonder, I didn't have the opportunity really to know my grandparents, but I wonder how they reacted as they watched this TV come into their world.
Sure.
And see the family kind of breaking up. I see that a lot with the computer systems. Like when we, in the 90s, when everybody was looking at getting a computer, or in the 80s, I had a Commodore 64, by the way. So
for younger kids, it's like having a chisel and you're doing it into granite. All right.
Like you'd wondered, I have to enter all this and then it doesn't even do anything. And now I have to, way before Microsoft.
Right.
Terrible DOS. So
I DOSed too.
But once Microsoft came in, and then we had a computer, we had one computer and it was in the main room, and like everybody was really interested and we would watch things on it. And then over time, right, it got cheaper. Then everybody gets a computer, and then you start separating. And now we have that same computer element in our phone or on a tablet where it's mobile and it's with us all the time. It's very similar to me as how the television kind of came in.
Sure.
To the families and how that would happen. But it takes a really strong person and family to say, no, and my gosh, you would be considered the radical, right? You know, you don't have internet, you don't have a smartphone. What's wrong with you people?
Well, and also it's difficult, like the work I do, I have to have a smartphone. It's really difficult not to have it, not to
I do too.
survive.
I do too.
I remember a rap from the 90s that went, I don't know if there's a equivalent one for the phones, but it goes, television is the drug of the nation, breeding ignorance and feeding radiation. So it's well, where this is going, watch some bad History Channel show, and they're talking about, like, where is this going? They're going to be implanting this crap in people's heads, right? It's going to get to the point where people aren't going to be interacting with reality,
right?
With this 4-dimensional reality, right?
It's becoming we are less. Part of it being in a community is where you need each other. Mm-hmm. And if you are able to do everything on your own in the location, like in your little closet or space or wherever you are, and you don't need other people, then you lose that sense of community. That community is you and that phone. And the social media portion of it engulfs you, and you, especially with the younger kids who haven't had life experiences, they believe everything that they're reading, just like when we were kids and we would believe everything on the TV box, right? Like it's true, it's on the TV. But our parents would say, oh, that's not really true. Like, that's just pretend. But our minds were being formed. And so now you have kids that are completely connected. Well, now those kids have grown up and they're young adults. They're teenagers, internet, like the 90s, probably, I want to say, like in the 90s, it started coming around. Certainly by the 2000s, it was everywhere. And here we are in 2018. So even if you were born in the year 2000, you're 18 years old right now. And those people, those young adults are really struggling with loneliness and isolation. And there's been a lot of research studies done, and they're seeing the greatest number of those affected live in the United States. And I think it's because there's just an affluence and the ability to afford those smartphones.
Well, and that was the first place where it came out.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's where it was it was right there accessible. So
I hear you there. It's also the community. I mean, humans are social animals. We need to be around each other.
Yes, we do.
Right?
Yes, we do.
So we do very, very badly when we're alone. And a lot of community things have sort of broken apart. As civilization's going through this massive change right now, I think. There was a book that I read back in the 80s, and it still rings true today. It was called The Third Wave by this guy named Alvin Toffler, and he talked about civilization going from the industrial age into something else, and the structures of this earlier age are falling apart, and new structures are taking their place. And some of them had to do, and he was talking about things like community things like churches, for example, or religious organizations, whereas in previous generations, like our parents' generation, like my mother she was Polish Catholic. Her parents are immigrants from Poland, and they lived in a industrial city, and there was a church down the street. She went to Catholic school. Whether or not, I'm not going to judge Catholicism in and of itself, but there was the community that was based around the church, and then There were other organizations like her father would be a member of a certain fraternal order, blah, 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 blah. These things are broken apart because people don't go to church anymore. And they don't, for example, the Catholic Church, a lot of people are quite disgruntled with it because of some of the horrible things that have happened through that institution. And there's others. So we don't, a lot of times we don't have those things that keep us, bound together by knowing the people in the neighborhood or knowing the people in the community, or going to school now in the States. I read all these things about these horrible shootings, and now, people are paranoid of each other, and you have to have this, it's like going to the airport just to go to school because the people are, the firearms and so forth. That is not a safe place anymore. Or even whether it is or not a safe place, it doesn't feel like a safe place before, So the community breaking apart, and it's not. I don't think it's just young people either. This social isolation, I think it's. I oftentimes get affected by it. I'm living overseas, and I know as I get older, it's just more difficult to make friends. And a lot of where I'm living is a lot of people come and go, so you make good friends and then they leave, and then you're like, and it's not. I know as I get older, I'm also. It's just. How do I say this? It isn't so easy. It isn't so easy even to make shallow, light. I don't know what called light social.
Superficial.
Well, not superficial friends, but I mean to have a real friend.
Acquaintances.
Yeah, acquaintances. So, I used to be an English teacher, and now I can't remember how to speak English. Anyway, to have acquaintances, and then moving on to friendship, that takes time.
Right. I mean, of course, it does.
Right, and then of course, at my age of life, everyone's really busy if they either have kids or their families and so forth. So that so then when you're isolated, or like I'm also working from home, I was starting to go a little bit crazy because I wasn't interacting with people, chatting around the coffee machine or whatever. One thing that worked well for me is I started going to a gym, a CrossFit gym. And half the reason probably more than half the reason I go there is because I make friends. And the way the gym is set up, it's not just people sitting in the machines. You're interacting with everyone. Right. You're bonding through physical exhaustion.
Well, you have your workout of the day, and there's like a little competition that goes on.
Yeah.
You get your name up there on the dry erase board.
Yeah. So for me, that's how I make friends, and I made a lot of great friends that way. Yeah. And I'm going to plug CrossFit Kyoto. Hi, Russell. But nonetheless, it is a good way for me. That's one of the things I found that was to get out there into the world and not just get out there by myself.
Well, what they found in the studies was the kids are going to school, Paul. They're around their peers all over the place. They don't have a sense of community. They don't talk to each other. They're sending text messages to other people. There was an article, I'm so sorry, I can't even remember where I read it at, but it basically talked about the recess. And there's an elementary school. They have the kids surrender their cell phone at the beginning of the day. The teacher has a box on her desk that basically is a place for all the cell phones to kind of fit inside the little cubbies. So the kids see their phone, because that's important. They need to see their phone. And then when recess comes, they pick up their phone and they go outside and they're on their phone. There's no play. There's no conversation.
Why do they let them have the phone at recess?
I don't know.
It's like, here's a ball, throw it at each other's heads.
I know, right? So but they were just talking about that recess was just kind of changing. Like the kids aren't even active. And what I would, if any of our listeners out there have influence over children, really they model our behavior. So if we're on the cell phone or we're on the tablet or we're connected completely all the time, they're just going to model that behavior. So you have to reintroduce things with them and do things with them that is interactive. That means you are doing things with them. And that can also be tiring and exhausting if you're not accustomed to doing that and if you don't know what to do. The pendulum is swinging way the other way. We're going to have a generation of adults that don't know how to play with their kid. That don't know, like, how do I take care of this thing?
Sure. Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, well, people don't learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I've seen this. I mean, it's also weird things like in the old days, like you go out to dinner with a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days after dinner, we would have a smoke.
Right.
Now everybody has, okay, it's too late.
So some of the restaurants out here, they give you a percentage off if you surrender your phone. So there's a basket, you give the waitress your phone, the basket, she takes your phones, puts it over in secured place, and you interact with your guest.
Oh my God. Actually, I have a quick question. So,
yeah.
About just a culture thing, having not been to the States much. So here there is a bit of a social rules about cell phone use. I remember when cell phones first came popularly in Japan, they had about a year of social discussion on TV and so forth about how do you handle your phone. So basically, like when you're on the train in Japan, people don't talk on the phone, and if they do, they're like,
right.
Okay, and there's and also like in the workplace, if you have to use your mobile phone, you have to go out in the hallway to talk on it. If it's a landline phone, you can sit there and talk, but if it's which is like a little bit like, wait a minute, it's kind of the same thing, but if there's a cord attached, well, I guess you just can't pick that up. But there are these but Japan is also a country of pretty rigid social rules, and so I'm curious and of course there are some people that are rude with their phones or whatever.
There is no rule. It's really unbelievable what I've seen. And what I've seen,
for example.
What I don't understand this, when you're talking to someone on a cell phone, what I saw at the airports, just walking around in town or in the grocery store or in a restaurant, people don't talk on the phone. They have it on speaker, and they'll have the phone kind of tilted up and they'll be talking into the speaker. So everybody in the neighborhood gets to hear this conversation.
It's definitely not an interesting conversation either.
No, and it's just frustrating because it's loud, or it comes back to who's the most important person in the room. Well, in the United States, it's the person that person is the most important person. And I think in the Japanese culture, the most important person in the room is the other person.
Yeah, well, the Japanese culture, the manners here, which are really important, it's all based around, I go out of my way not to bother you, and if you go out of your way not to bother we, neither of us are bothered. And if everybody does that, it works out fine. When someone doesn't do it, then it all starts falling apart. But yeah.
In the United States, it's all about me. I don't know why. If you don't like it, you got feet, you can move.
Yeah. Because here the only time I ever see people talking like you were just talking about is foreign tourists. Not necessarily.
I don't understand why they're doing it. I really don't understand why they do that, but it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. So
I've seen some people that the entire day they had carrying their phone and somebody was on the phone. I mean, it was like hours. And they're like this the whole time. Basically looking up someone's nose hairs. Yeah. So these devices, so we're entering, is this a new phase of evolution?
Well, I mean, there's something going on. I mean, we're going to grow up to be very anxious people. And actually I've expanded, I shouldn't say expanded, my practice. I am being connected. More moms are connecting with me, and I'm helping them with anxiety and depression, and they're connecting with me because they are not sure how to do the things that they need to do, or they're worried, or they're concerned about their kid, or they're caught up in their social media piece. It's a new problem that this is birthed out of. I don't think that was ever the intention of it at all. I think it's pretty cool that we have this information available to us as long as you're connected. At some point, I would imagine that there's going to be a pretty hefty fee to be connected, and more so than even just like free Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. I think it's going to become just as important as food, really, to some people. And I do think that there's an evolution happening in the sense like knowledge and where we get our knowledge from. I mean, if something happened and the grid went down and there was no power and we didn't have the connectivity to the cloud, or the satellites were blown out of the sky, we wouldn't have, books become a rarity even now. Finding out the answer to things, we would get lost. And who the heck knows anybody's phone numbers even if you could use the phone? And how can you even get around your own city? You can't, because you have to use GPS, because you're not connecting with what's going on. So you're not paying attention. Nobody knows how to use a paper map anymore, if you can even find a map. It's very, very interesting and also very frightening.
Sure, because we're dependent upon, and this is sort of the, don't want to go to this. There's a rabbit hole which I don't really want to go down, but there's
I get it. But we are
for being totally controlled, especially maybe not our generation, but the next one,
and certainly their kids.
Because people believe the crap that we're getting thrown at, or not everyone is, but I mean, you can see what the stuff is happening, like politically in the world. It's split half and half, and it's really polarized, and people don't want to listen to anybody else's opinion. Like, talking about politics is brain numbing nowadays, because it's like people just want to hear if you agree with them. They don't want to have like a discussion like, well, maybe there's no gray anymore. It's either this or this. It's like, wait a minute, the world is infinitely more complicated than that.
And that is probably one of the most, probably the reason why I enjoy living in Oregon so much, and why I kind of migrated back into Oregon, is because the people here are really progressive, and they question those kind of things. Okay. And they do things like, no, we have this group and we don't use our phones, or we don't, or it's all handwritten. If you're doing something, you're just writing it out by hand. They challenge you to really to return back to those simple tasks that we used to know how to do.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
But boredom is a big problem too.
What?
Boredom. Because you're part of the isolation and the loneliness is because boredom is uncomfortable. People will do all they can to prevent boredom, so that connects them to the internet or whatever's their social media, whatever's happening. They're connected via that because of wanting to not be bored.
And so then it becomes an addiction.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it does. And I would imagine at the next DSM, a next little diagnostic manual that we use to diagnose people, I would imagine there'll be an internet addiction on there.
I see, and having traveled so much, I mean, if we both were traveling, this is not just a North American thing, or North American, it's everywhere. People have got their phones all over the place.
Yes.
It's interesting, we were talking about nobody knows how to read a map. Kyoto's an international tourist destination, and so I see all these people, and they got their little Google Map thing, and they're totally lost. They're like, I mean, it's useful. I mean, Google Maps is amazing, but I mean, I'm geographically aware, so it's like, which way is north? I asked somebody which way is north. They're like,
I don't know.
Let's see, the sun is that direction.
Right.
In the south, let's see, it's in the afternoon, so that's west.
We were driving from Portland down to Salem, Oregon, and my husband was kind of tinkering with the GPS, and I said, the signs are perfect. Look, it says Salem. Let's just follow that sign. And he agreed. Smart guy.
Smart guy. He married you. That's why you guys are still married, as opposed to having an argument for the next 30 minutes.
So I can only imagine how, I think of this being as the internet and the connectivity being as instrumental in our lives, or in the future lives, as electricity was to the families. I mean, that changed everything too. You know, when people had electricity, and those that grew up without electricity, when electricity showed up, then, that ruined everybody. From that came all those evil.
Well, okay. I mean, there's the other way of looking at it is we're going through this transformation, right? And how do we?
Yes.
So it's easy to fall into the world's getting worse. It's getting worse.
Exactly. I am not saying that. I love my internet, and I love being able to connect on the phone.
Just what we're doing right now is pretty amazing. Like when we were in university, someone said we could do this. I mean, and it's relatively, this is, in 1995, when I moved here, to do something like this, you'd have to have massive satellite trucks. You'd have to have this infrastructure, television network, not just a station. It would cost $1 zillion to bounce this crap off a satellite. So, I mean, and so we're able to connect with people this way that we weren't before. Right. I guess sort of some of maybe things that you and I do, we come from a different point of view, but to help people, how do we navigate this new world that we live in? Right? The word new, it is a new age, but that phrase has been co-opted to mean something different. This is different, but we have a new era that we're in. And how do we keep our humanity in all of that, right? Because this stuff, really, if we're going to go back to the metaphor here of this apple being, the serpent, the demon is tempting us. Are they going to control us? Really? I mean, is this controlling us? So how do we get our freedom?
So you have, I think there's people that are controlled by it, just given the nature that they're in, or the developmental stage that they're in their life. I think that usually some sort of a natural disaster or something happens where you lose connectivity, and then you start kind of regaining things. Something can happen. But for us, I think the message is to have clear boundaries, to understand that you are not immune of being addicted as well. I'm not immune to being addicted as well. And the importance of that community, and making it a purposeful event to go out and talk to people and meet people and interact. It's easier for us because we're beyond the peer pressure piece, but on those adolescents, the kids, and all through their adolescence, it's really hard. It's really hard. The pressure can be very intense.
Sure. I remember being a teenager. Lots of it sucked.
Oh yeah. And I'm thinking sports is probably a good thing to get involved in. If you get involved with your local community ball team.
Sure. Well, again, with anything, so let's talk about, what are things we can do? So our listeners are most likely not adolescents, but tend to be older, but we can still talk about both of these things because, what is it that we can do to actually counteract this loneliness and isolation? So one of the things that I personally did is I joined this club that it's something that I like to do anyway, and I like the people there, and there's community involved. So I joined a community. What are some other, so especially like you were talking about, people that really didn't do this when they were growing up. I mean, when I grew up in school, we had these clubs to join. It wasn't just sports, it was something that we did. And also in university. In university, I was busy all the time. I was never bored. Kind of didn't have time to be bored, but one of the last things I did was, I guess I got a test on Tuesday. I should go to that class. So,
Yes.
but I mean, I always had something to do. I met a bunch of people and actually, I think, learn more through these social interactions by meeting these people. But if you haven't been raised with that, so what do you do?
Yeah. So I think that's where you have to, for our age group, I think the folks that are watching this show need to do some little personal reflection. And if you want to just know how connected you are, or how addicted, if you even want to use that word, how is it impacting you? Take a personal account of where do you spend your time? How many times are you talking to other people? Are there other people even in your life? And then do something radical, like, leave your phone at the house and go for a walk. That's really hard for some people. I had a time where it was hard for me, where I would think, well, what if somebody wanted to get a hold of me? What if I got in trouble and I needed to call somebody? Well, everybody around me has a phone. Could easily borrow a phone if I was in
And
trouble.
how many years of your life did you exist when you didn't have a phone?
Yeah. And I've never gotten in trouble. Hasn't
Ah,
happened. Hasn't
yeah,
happened. But that's
yeah,
that fear, right? So the fear just kind of fuels all of that. And
yeah.
you see that with parents. They'll get a phone for their kid and they'll say, well, I want them to be able to get a hold of me. Well, they're not going to get a hold of you. You're not going to be anywhere where anything. They're not going to call you.
Well, yeah, fear.
So I think it's personal reflection. I think it's really seeing where you fit in that problem. Are you isolated and alone? And then social connection. And if you are in a place where you have maybe some depression or anxiety or panic, or you have you're just frightened to get out of the house, that's where you reach out to people that can help you. And that's where you go talk to a friend, or you find a provider, a mental health practitioner, or somebody who can help you overcome that. But nobody deserves that. Nobody should live a life of isolation or of loneliness. It shouldn't happen. And if you look beyond yourself, which is like a radical thought in the United States, look beyond yourself and see what the people in your area, in your little sphere of influence, in your little bubble, what are they doing and what's going on with them? Because there's lonely people. And until that connection is made, they just deteriorate. You just can't thrive in that environment. We
No, you
really
can't.
are social creatures.
Also, I think for folks, if with the loneliness thing, I'm just thinking about myself, was just to try things
Right.
that you never did before. Like, well, I'll try going to this place. Maybe this club. Maybe I'm going to say something radical. Maybe you could go to a church or a religious organization, because one of the things about churches
Yeah.
is that
They're going to connect you.
it's the social element. Okay.
Right.
Now, of course, there's so many different flavors out there, you can probably find something that works. There was in Grand Rapids, where I'm from, there was actually quite a cool church. It was called Fountain Street Church, and it was non-denominational, but it was like kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Unitarian Universalist, I guess. And the
Uh-huh.
place, it was this giant old building, and it was super popular. Why? Because they had a coffee thing in the basement afterwards, and it was packed with people. And it was people made social connections, and actually
Yeah.
a lot of the people that ran the town that were in sort of that social
Yeah.
cultural sphere, that's where they went. And then we also, in the newspaper business, I got to go around, and actually I worked on the religion page.
Mm-hmm.
I always worked on Sunday, so we did these photo shoots of what are these different religious organizations are doing. And when in the Black community, a lot of the churches were amazing. They were really cool, and the people
Oh,
were really
yeah.
nice, and everybody knew each
Yes.
other. And
Yeah.
some were better than others, like, of course, but I mean, it was like there was a lot going on, and people they helped each other, and they had these networks of people that would help each other out, right? So if you do have a problem in your life, you can get on the phone and talk to somebody. It's not that they're just bunking.
And they really care. They care about you.
Yeah. And I also used to work here in Kyoto. I was an English teacher. I worked for the YMCA and the YWCA. And both of these organizations they're a bit different, and each community is a little bit different, but they're like the YWCA. It was a women's organization, Christian women's organization. Again, they weren't selling religion. They were just doing what they felt. This is what Jesus said you do. So we'll help women. So that we actually had a helpline. Actually, one of the things they did was helping women that were either foreign women that were being abused in Japan, and especially some of the things are people that were in the sex trade, helping them escape. But nonetheless, they had other stuff going on, and they had classes for their kids or whatever. Yeah. So people meet and they make friends. If you go to a place that doesn't work for you, try something else. Try something new a week. Right. Maybe that gym works, maybe the chess club. I don't know. Everybody's there's lots of meetups.
Meetups are worldwide, and it's just organizations, groups of people that decide they want to do something, and they invite whoever, and you can say you're going to go, and there's no fee typically, and it's not, if you don't go, they're not going to come after you and wonder where you were. But I think the other key is that you touched on was helping other people, because again, when you can take your eyes off yourself and really look at how can I interact and help somebody else, then the focus is on that other person, and there's healing that takes care of. I mean, you start healing because you are helping somebody else, and you learn a lot from that. So that's another huge piece, volunteering and helping.
Question I have for you about a psychology question. So why is anxiety so tied with this social isolation and the
I'll tell you, it's tied because of the instant gratification.
Instant gratification?
Mm-hmm. There's instant gratification and the worry of what is yet to come. So with anxiety, you are it's an accelerated response. You're really heightened, turned on, really high. Like you are wide awake. Everything that your neurons are just firing really fast. You're very aware, and your heartbeat starts. Your heart starts beating faster. You might get sweaty. You just your whole body is in an accelerated state. And when you're connected to something online and you don't know what the next thing is going to be, you don't know what's going on, your brain will start kind of filling in its own blanks and coming up with its own narrative of what could happen. And so you get this whole big fear thing that happens, and you're kind of like a dog chasing its tail. If anybody's ever seen that, they never catch their tail, but they'll just keep running and running and running and running and running around. Well, with anxiety, people even get to the point, Paul, where they become anxious about being anxious.
Yeah,
and it just happens over and over again. But because there's not interaction with other people, because they haven't experienced the normal social courtesies and customs and such, they haven't had they don't know how to behave. They're worried about how they're going to come across. They're not resilient. So the littlest of thing can just send them into a tailspin, where as you have experienced problems and you problem solve it, it's not such a big deal anymore.
Because also, for example, like social media, people present themselves as this perfect thing, or I know, like if I flip through Facebook, I often
everybody's in Happy Land.
Well, they're either on Happy Land or there are a lot of people are preaching to me or whatever. True. And the way that certain things are, nowadays it's like these short little headlines that make you just feel like you're not perfect or you're not. Just make you feel like crap. It's like, wait a minute, this is manipulative.
Yes.
Like one of the best things that improved my Facebook feed is I joined this Far Side cartoon thing and dumped a bunch of people that were just preaching political or whatever crap at me, because it was like, oh, this is funny. And the rest of it,
right? No, I think that's
my friends' kids' pics and what are my friends doing.
No, you have to prune. You have to prune everything. So you have a garden. Your social media is your garden. You got to pull out the weeds. And you've got to prune. You got to pick the plants you want to take care of, and then those are the ones that flourish, and the rest of them you have to get rid of.
And as to explain this, I again, our generation, I think, knows this, but the internet gives us a really messed up view of reality, and I can see it a lot. I'm on a side business where I lead tours and photo tours and take pictures of people here in Kyoto. And so people want to go to these places where they see the picture of there's a place called the Bamboo Forest here. And the picture you always see online is like nobody in the bamboo forest. Well, now there's like, every day there's like thousands and thousands of shit back. And like, I want to propose marriage in the bamboo forest. It's like, no, you don't. Really, unless you want to be with you and your closest, 20,000 of your closest Chinese cousins, this is what you don't want to do. And then people get really upset because I'm telling them, this is what reality, this is why you're hiring me, because I know the context of what's going on, because I have this knowledge here that you don't get from the internet. And some people get really, really upset when I'm challenging the information they gathered off the internet. It's like, I've been here 23 years. Well, but yeah, I mean, so then take it to the broader view of the world, where there's so many people, this is the worst time in history and blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, you ever notice if I post good stories about good things that are happening in the world, nobody clicks it. Nobody likes it.
Yeah, it was.
But if we have something that reinforces whatever our political idea is, for example, click it. This is, the world's getting more horrible. Let's feed ourselves a little bit more of the horrors of the world, and the world's getting even more horrible. It's getting more horrible. It's getting more horrible. It's getting more.
It really depends on those people in your feed, right?
Sure, totally.
So
absolutely,
that's where it gets really frustrating. But I would just tell you that if there's anybody that's watching or listening and they feel like they're sitting on this isolation and loneliness, they just need to reach out. They can certainly reach out to me. They can reach out to you. There's people that they can connect with.
Okay.
Nobody deserves that.
Having said all of that, I'm going to put our names back up. Francis Robbins, Paul Crouse. How can people contact you, Francis?
Well, I have an online therapy practice, and it's called Precision Mental Performance.
Mental Performance.
Yes, it's not nearly as catchy as Too Tall Paul, but Precision Mental Performance, and my email address would be Frances, so that's FRANCES at precisionmentalperformance.com.
Okay. And if people just Googled your name, Francis Robbins, is there another word they could put on that? Because I'm sure there's probably more than one Francis Robbins in the world, right?
Well, I do have, there's lots of Francis Robbins in the world. So Precision Mental Performance is the best way, but I also have a new shortcut. If somebody just is lost and they don't know what to say, they can definitely type in SF Robbins, ROBBINS.com, and it will take them right to Precision.
SF as in San Francisco, or what is it? Sarah Francis?
Sarah Francis.
Sarah Francis Robbins. Okay.
That's
so
me.
I'm Paul Crouse. There are lots of Paul Crouses spelled with a C. I'm not the guy with the fraud conviction in Florida. Okay, that's not me. And I'm not selling used cars in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. That's Amish land. I don't know how good their business is, actually. But that's
probably not very good.
Well, not everybody's Amish in Amish land, all right?
Right.
So you can reach me at paulcrouse.com or tootallpaul.com. Somebody told me to get rid of that, but it's like everybody spells my name with a K, so I don't know. Anyway, we got about a minute. So Francis, thank you very, very, very much. As always, it's good to talk with you. And thanks everybody for listening. And and Neshi, I haven't read the feed, sorry. it's really hard for me to focus on this. There's a feed just below the screen here, and sorry guys. Hi everybody. So Rob and Neshi and Holly and Carla Joe
Oh,
and all the other folks.
wonderful.
Sorry, I haven't read any of this stuff on there. Sorry, it's not that I'm ignoring you, but I'm ignoring you because we're going to be focusing on one thing.
That's
All right.
right.
Our time's up right now. So thanks everybody, and thank you very much, Frances.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.